as well as Santa Clara University constitutional law professor Margaret Russell join me tonight in studio, but we also have the author of Prop 8, Andy Cuneo, live from the phone in Sacramento tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, I'm going to start with you first. I want to get your reaction and also ask you, will you take any kind of appeal directly to the Supreme Court or go to the full Ninth Circuit Court?
Well, first, obviously, we're disappointed in the result because, once again, the will of the voters has been, set aside for the views of a couple of judges. But it's really not much of a surprise, given the makeup of the Ninth Circuit, and particularly this three-judge panel, and the decision being written by, probably the most liberal judge on the Court of Appeals. So you have to take that in that context and realize this is just one step in what everyone has agreed is a longer journey to the Supreme Court.
All right, Margaret, I'm going to turn to you. You actually attended a lot of the federal trial. The panel ruling today, of course, Prop 8 is unconstitutional, but the dissenting judge also mentioned the will of the people in what he wrote. There was a hint of that anyway. So now we've got to balance what happens next. All the constitutional issues that are implicated, and also this whole notion that the people voted on something. How do you think all of that's going to play out? Where is going to be the balance in all of that?
Well, I think the next step will obviously be to see whether the full Ninth Circuit, which would be a panel of 11 judges, will hear the case. And so that is yet to be decided. There's still another level at the Ninth Circuit. If it goes to the Supreme Court, and I don't think that is by any means a sure thing, then it will go on the issue that's within the opinion today, and that's the equal protection issue of whether Proposition 8 is justified by what's called a legitimate reason. And the majority vote said that nothing at the trial supported the argument that it was based on a legitimate reason.
All right, Stephen, let's turn to you. What happens if it does go to the full Ninth Circuit? It's known as a very liberal court. A lot of their opinions have been overturned over the years. So what do you think happens if it goes to the full Ninth Circuit? You heard Andy mention that it's a very liberal panel today. Does it get any more conservative or not? Does that come into play at all, or what?
It certainly could. It's a numbers game. I think today the proponents of Prop 8 got some good things in the decision, particularly on the standing issue. I think they feel very good that they do have standing to raise this issue both at the Ninth Circuit and at the Supreme Court. And it was a 2-to-1 decision, and the one judge who did rule in their favor said there was a rational basis for Proposition 8, and there was a great deference to the will of the people. So, it's a 2-to-1 decision. There's a lot of litigation left to do, so I think they take some solace in that today.
Andy, I want to turn to you. So do you think you're going to go to the Ninth Circuit, to the full court there, or do you skip and go to the U.S. Supreme Court? How do you think all of this is going to be viewed once it goes to the federal level? I guess ultimately that's where everybody thinks it's headed.
Well, unfortunately, I can't give you an answer to that today. This is 130 pages of opinions that we have to read and digest and make a good decision on whether to go to the Ninth or instead go to the Supreme Court. But there's still the possibility, even if we don't ask for it, that a judge on the Ninth Circuit who wasn't on the panel could call for a vote, and the Ninth Circuit could on its own decide to pull the case back and rehear it by that 11-judge panel that was mentioned earlier.
All right, and Margaret, is the Supreme Court compelled? Do they have to hear this? Could they pass on it? I know some people think that they might not want to get involved in such a hot-button social issue and leave it up to the states to decide. Could they sidestep it, or you think they'll end up hearing this case?
Well, they're not compelled to hear it. The rule is that in order for them to grant review, 4 justices, for any reason, without explanation, would vote to take up the case. And that is after months of briefing, so we're really not talking about something that's going to happen anytime soon. But if 4 justices agree to take it up, then the full court will hear it. And my prediction is that they probably will hear the case, but there are lots of reasons not to. For example, the opinion today focuses very heavily on the California context of this law and not a broader question of a fundamental right to marry.
Brent, I was going to actually ask Andy do you feel this is the right test case to take to the United States Supreme Court when you look at the rather scathing language in the Ninth Circuit decision? You wonder, is this the right case to decide gay marriage in general across the United States, or should you wait and have perhaps some better law or better language, somewhere else in the United States. I think that today's ruling, there was a lot of problems with that for you.
Well, first, it is to point out that this decision is completely out of step with all of the other federal court appellate decisions and even the decisions of the United States Supreme Court. And so we have that body of law to rely on when we go up on appeal. But I do think that whether it's this case or any other, at the end of the day, really, whether it's unique to California or more generally, it all comes down to whether the voters could have a rational, even if it's imperfect, rational reason for limiting marriage to a man and a woman and treating the opposite sex relationship as unique. And really, that's kind of going to be the final end game. And I think this case would be as good as any.
Margaret, I want to kind of look at kind of another issue that's kind of on a broader level, but it could affect some constitutional questions. We just heard about the debate going back and forth between Christians and in particular the Catholic Church when it comes to the new federal health care laws and whether or not this federal law can impact certain religious freedoms. Does the same thing happen when we get to Prop 8 and same-sex marriage? So in other words, let's say that we do have a federal law and they say, yes, we should have same-sex marriage as ruled by the Supreme Court. So a couple goes to a church and says, okay, we want to get married, and the church says, no, we don't want to on religious grounds. Is the same thing going to happen when it comes to same-sex marriage as the debate we're having right now with healthcare and religion?
I think not, because it's undisputed on all sides that if a couple goes to a church or some kind of religious organization and says, we wish to marry, the church is a private entity. It's not the government. It has the right to define the circumstances under which it will perform marriages, period, end of sentence. That's different from the current situation with entities such as hospitals, et cetera, that exercise their religious freedom but are also subject to receiving federal funds, government regulation. And that's not the case. They're really two separate entities. There's a legal institution of marriage, which has a license that's issued by the state, and then there are ceremonies within churches, and churches have the right to define who will get married in their churches.
Real quickly, last question, Stephen, how quickly might we see this either go to the Ninth Circuit or to the Supreme Court?
Well, certainly they're going to file their appeal to the Ninth Circuit rather quickly because I am sure that Andy will want to get a stay on this decision, and then the Supreme Court, if it takes it up, it will be sometime next year.
So the bottom line is, it means if you're a same-sex couple, probably those marriages are not going, those unions are not going to resume because of today's ruling of right away.
I don't think anytime soon. That's my feeling.
All right, Stephen,
I would agree with that.
Margaret, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. And Andy, thank you for joining us via phone from Sacramento tonight. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.